This happened a few years ago when I was about 15 years old. It was a pretty common occurrence at the time for my family and families of my two best friends to go out for dinner. During one such time, my best friends and I decided that it would be more adult and cooler for us to sit away from the rest of our families and just to eat and chat at a separate table. We were a couple of young teens having a fun. That's when one of my friends, Jenny, whispered that a guy sitting at the table next to us seemed to be staring at me. I slightly turned my head and realized that he did seem to be looking my way, but brushed it off. I mean, we were at a restaurant. People looking around seemed normal and innocent enough. As the time progressed, my other friend, Gabby, also noticed the man staring at me, and we began to get a little more concerned. He had seemed to have finished his food a long time ago, but just continued to sit there, watching us, especially me. The man seemed to be in his 30s and his expression was starting to creep the three of us out, but we decided not to do anything in case this was just us overthinking. Eventually, the man did pay and leave, and we felt relief. But as soon as I took my first bite of food, Jenny motioned to me frantically. We were sitting by a window, and as it turns out, the man had left the restaurant, but he hadn't fully left the premises. He was actually standing below the window, continuing to stare at me. At this point, we realized that this wasn't normal behavior, but we also didn't want our families and cause a scene. So we kept eating, but also kept our attention on the window. By the time we were all done with dinner and our bill had been paid, the man was still outside. We were worried he would try something. So we stayed close to where our dads on the way out. He followed us as we walked to our cars from a distance, but eventually changed direction and left. The whole ordeal was super creepy to us, but we let it go because, well, it was over, or so we thought. 3 months later, the three of us decided to visit the busy downtown area of our city, just for fun. We were standing on a street corner, trying to figure out where to go next, when I felt Gabby tapping my shoulder. At first, I didn't respond, but when she continued, I looked up and I felt like my heart stopped. It was the same guy from the restaurant. The restaurant had been nowhere near where we were currently standing, yet somehow by sheer coincidence, we had ran into him again in a city of a huge population. The guy made eye contact with me, and I could tell that he recognized us. We immediately walked away as fast as we could, and he started to follow. But after a few minutes, eventually we did lose him. We tried to then continue with our plans and did end up having a good time, all things considered. However, just when we had decided to head back home, we ran into the guy and one of his friends. Again, this time we were really freaked out. He spotted us again, and this time him and his friend followed us. Gabby told us that maybe he wouldn't come after us if we went into a makeup store. We tried that, but no. They walked right inside after us. At this point, Jenny was ready to call the police, but we decided to try to lose them one last time by ducking into a toy store. We stayed in the store for a while and kept an eye out outside. They walked back and forth for a few minutes looking for us, but eventually they left the area, and we decided now is the time to make our move and leave. This time we lost them for good, but the whole ordeal would still be beyond stressful. The three of us never told anyone else what happened. I still don't know what he wanted from me, or what would have happened if he caught up to us. But I'm glad I haven't seen the guy since all these years later. My friends and I think back to this incident and still think about how crazy the odds were to meet the same creep more than once in completely different random places. To the creep who stalked me and my friends. Let's never meet again. This story takes place when I was around 16 to 17 years old. I lived with just my dad in a little apartment in a questionable area. It was the type of area you'd not want to be out and about in when the sun goes down up until a certain time, like 10 to 11 p.m. There would be a cop or two in the area patrolling and making sure that there was no gang-related activities going on. I had a job at a restaurant in the city, which was about a 30-minute car ride and an hour-and-a-half train ride. The train was a couple of blocks away from my place. And since my dad was always too lazy or hungover to drive me, that was my main form of transportation. I went to work about 3 p.m. and would usually get home around 12 or 1 a.m. This was my schedule 4 days a week. Aside from having school, I would see a lot of familiar faces on the train because of this, but we never really made conversation with each other. Until one night when I got out of work late, because some assholes wanted to sit in the restaurant past closing. Thanks to them I missed my train. The next one wasn't scheduled to arrive for another hour, so having nowhere to go and no money for Lyft or Uber, I sat there waiting. No one was around me. So when this older man showed up kind of staggering a bit, I assumed he was another drunk and homeless person in the city, trying to catch a train to sleep on. Something about his face gave me déjà vu, but I shrugged it off thinking maybe I had just seen him on the train here and there. He made his way over to me much to my discomfort and started up a conversation. He wasn't slurring, but the way that he was looking down at me gave me goosebumps. He made his way over to me, much to my discomfort, and started up a conversation. He wasn't slurring, but by the way, he was looking down at me, gave me goosebumps. He asked me why I was out there, so late all by myself. I had to reply as to not anger him. I mean, we were alone, and he was close enough to me to pull out a knife or something. Anyway, I told him I was waiting for the train, and he asked which one. Now the train was color-coded with a strip at the top to indicate where it was going to north, southeast, or west areas. I took blue, but I lied and said that I took green. He looked at the schedule above the benches and saw that the green train was coming in 15 minutes. So he said that he'd keep me company for those extremely long 15 minutes. He asked me how long I'd been working at so-and-so restaurant. This made my blood run ice cold. I never told him where I worked. I just looked at him and very timidly answered for a year, and he laughed. He said,
"Wow, it's already been a full year, huh?"
At this point, my skin was itching out of anxiety, and as soon as the green train came, I knew that I had no choice but to take it. I said goodbye to him and thanked him for the chat, hoping that it would be the end of it. Nope. He suddenly told me that he took the green train too. So he followed me on and sat in the seat behind me. My mind was racing about whether he was going to try and do something to me, like chloroform me or hurt me some other way, but we rode the train in silence. I was trying to figure out how he was going to lose him. There weren't that many people riding the train at that hour. Our car was empty. Unfortunately, as the ride went on in a menacing silence, I could feel him staring down at the back of my head. I waited until we got to a stop where there was another person, and I was so relieved to see a woman sitting there. She wasn't boarding, so I immediately got off the train and the man followed me as expected. I took a seat on the bench next to hers, close enough for her to see and hear everything that was going on. hoping that she would catch on. The man noticed that I was sniffling allergies and being out in the cold and asked if I was sick. I told him no, but he insisted on giving me these weird pills he had that were supposedly cold medicine. I declined in a louder voice. Sorry, I don't accept pills from strangers. This prompted the lady to look at us, and I made eye contact with her. She knew now. Now this went on until a blue train came, and the lady got up, giving me a look that told me to get on with her. So without explanation, I did. She waved me over to sit next to her. And when the man tried to follow, she said, "No, you go sit over there," and made him sit a couple of seats across from us. He chose the one where he could face us and stared at me the entire time. I was shaking and about to burst into tears. The woman leaned over and whispered to me that she had a pistol. I felt safer with her there. We whispered back and forth about what happened. I told her where I lived and how I was worried he would follow me home. She told me a friend of hers would be boarding the train soon, and when he did, she told me his name was Ray. Ray was filled in about everything and agreed to escort me home. She promised me that I could trust him. The two of them waited with me until I got to my stop. The man, still watching me, started to smile widely, resembling the Cheshire Cat. He shouted, "This is your place, right?" To which I didn't respond and just gave the woman a hug and thanked her. Ray and I hurriedly popped off the train. And as I looked back, I saw that the woman had pulled out her pistol and told the man to sit back down, even blocking the exit with her body. I finally let myself cry in relief. Ray walked me home and tried to calm me down by telling me about his job and his family. After watching me get inside the gates of my apartment safely, I thanked him profusely for his help. It chills me to think about how that night would have turned out. If I hadn't met up with that woman and her friend, I feel extremely lucky to this day. I never saw that man again and eventually stopped thinking about him. But in the back of my mind, that creepy, aroused smile of his was burned into my head, and I couldn't help but wonder just what else he knew about me. I used to work in an industrial area that tends to be secluded and dark at night, with minimal lighting along the roads. I also lived close to this previous job, so I would walk home instead of taking the bus. I can't drive. The bus routes tended to be awkward and have long wait times, so I usually walk. One night in early October, I had been walking through a parking lot to get to my place. I had to walk through a few parking lots to get to my place. However, the parking lots close to the main road were where these incidents occurred. Anyway, as I'm walking through the desolate parking lot, I'm listening to music and enjoying my walk, when I get this suspicious feeling that I should look behind me. I look behind and see this individual wearing a hoodie and track pants and appears to be maybe a woman. This person is pale and seems to be watching me after emerging from the bushes and trees she was hiding in. She picks up pace from behind me, but continues to walk horizontal to me. I ran across the main road, and when I looked back, I could see her standing next to the set of trees. She then realizes that I see her watching me and jumps behind a tree to hide. I go into some random apartments to hide from her and wait there for some time. I then left and went to my place. I told my mom about this incident, and she said that I should have called the police. Now it doesn't stop there. Now it's early November. I have a weird feeling that there's someone in this parking lot. I was walking through a different parking lot. This time, as the previous parking lot had freaked me out because someone was watching me as I'm walking through this parking lot. The person wearing a hoodie emerges from hiding behind a parked trailer, talking on her phone. I'm now thoroughly freaked out and decide to pick up my pace and get to the main road as fast as possible without alerting this person that I feel threatened by them. As I'm getting ready to cross the road, this person decides to cross the road as well and watches me as I cross the road. I book it to the random apartment and hide there until I assume she's gone. Now, the last time this happened was mid-November, a week after the second incident. I'm walking through the same parking lot that I saw her in the second time. Dumb. I know. This time, she emerges from hiding behind the trailer and starts walking towards me. I decided to just run and get to the main road. I get across the main road and look back, and she's gone. I assume she must have been hiding behind the trailer, as there was no way that she could have gotten out of the parking lot. In that time, I decide to hide in the same apartment building as well. Now I have not seen her as it has been snowing, so it would be significantly hard to see her face. And it's too cold to wait out in the parking lot. I also no longer work there, so I no longer have to take that road to work. Now it could have been a man, as they were pretty tall, but I thought I heard a voice when she was talking on her phone. And when I saw her the first time, I thought that she might have been a white female with dark hair. I've not gone to the police with this information, but I might. I doubt it would do anything, but my mom thinks it might.